Cherokee Council House, Cherokee, North Carolina, October 14, 2015, Resolution Number 31, 2015. Whereas, as members of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, organizers for the Indigenous Environmental Network, and in solidarity with all Indigenous peoples, we respectfully request that this resolution be accepted. In support of Indigenous peoples' rights to maintain and strengthen our relationship with our traditionally occupied lands, territories, waters, and coastal seas, and other resources, and to uphold our shared responsibilities to the next 7 generations. Now therefore be it resolved by the Eastern Band Cherokee Indians in annual council assembled, which a quorum is present, that climate change is a reality and has been accelerated by human actions. Our traditional practices based on natural and spiritual laws have maintained a delicate balance of the precious resources that have sustained us through the millennia. Place-based traditional knowledge of the environment has been proven to be valid and effective. Our traditional knowledge will not be replaced by an over-reliance on recent and narrowly defined Western reductionist scientific methods and standards. Increasingly severe impacts are already being experienced on every continent, with growing social, human, and environmental rights violations. We must act now to significantly reduce carbon, along with other greenhouse gases and damaging pollutants that threaten all life forms on Mother Earth. Climate change is a matter of social and economic justice, as it most affects Indigenous peoples who rely on the natural world for the survival of the next 7 generations. We will reject the indiscriminate and narrow application of unproven methods and technologies of industrialization and commodification of the air, land, water, and all life forms, as these are false solutions to the challenges we face now and in the future. As representatives of a sovereign nation, we will urge heads of state and key decision makers to address the human contributions to climate change and make firm commitments to support moratoriums on extreme fossil fuel and mineral extraction and use. Action is taken to initiate and strengthen policies and practices aimed at becoming sustainable and eco-friendly, with the goal of becoming carbon neutral at an earliest possible time frame. We commit to rejecting biomass, genetic engineering, natural world, carbon trading, carbon offsets, and carbon sequestration schemes, as they are false solutions to the climate change. Long-standing Indigenous peoples of equity and equality are adhered to, ensuring that all responses include provisions to assist the most vulnerable communities forced to adapt to the impacts of climate change and to account for the loss and damage already caused. We will engage in sustained climate justice advocacy with other Indigenous communities and with local, national, and international Indigenous organizations when called upon to do so. We support the implementation of strong measures to allow the full and equal participation of Indigenous people in consultation, decisions, and legally binding agreements on the local, national, and international negotiating levels, ensuring sustainable use through traditional resource knowledge and conservation practices, and moving forward. We unite in this common cause as we work to regain and maintain balance by adhering to natural law and the rights of Mother Nature. Be it finally resolved that this legislation shall become effective upon ratification of the Principal Chief, submitted by Lisa Montelongo and Missy Crowe.
Missy,
Yes, thank you, Council. Those of you that have been keeping up with the national news can just look next door to the state below us, and that's South Carolina. South Carolina is known as the dumping ground of the Southeast. All of the waste goes there. we actually send our trash down there. That's that I understood the contract that we had to dispose of our waste. We had a gentleman come in here in annual council Monday talking about the plastics. In my platform out there, I was talking about a regional MRF station. Now, what is a MRF? MRF, for those of you who don't know, is a metropolitan urban recyclable facility. Based on looking around us right now, looking at South Carolina, looking at what happened in Colorado by the EPA themselves. You know, the Navajo Nation, I feel that all nations need to stand up. Mind you, we had people down here in South Carolina. It's a whole state, but we had a whole nation, and the nation that this tribe should be standing in solidarity with and supporting in any way that we can. This is one of the things that we want the Eastern Band of Cherokee to be the forefront in. We are the biggest biodiverse area in the entire world, next to the Amazon rainforest and several others, the coral reef in Australia, they are also being degraded, they're being violated. The environment, as you look around. Now, what happened in South Carolina had nothing to do with man. What happened in South Carolina had to do with Creator. Now, there was a prophet, Chief Seattle, and he made a declaration to President Franklin Pierce, and in there he said, one of these days you guys you're gonna drown in your own waste. Where's the eagle? It's gone. Where's the sound of the whippoorwill? Where's the, folks, we have that here. And if you look too, we are the leading employer in Western North Carolina. And I don't know if guys know this, but a lot of people, when the car industry went down up north, a lot of them came here. We are bringing people from the Caribbean up to do contract work for us. Folks, we need to start looking at us, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, not to be mean, not to be some way, but we need to protect our lands and our people first. First. We had a drought here, right? And in 4 days, we were like 8 inches in drought. And in 4 days, we were out of a drought. That's how Creator works. So we can't be sitting here and saying, we've got all this water, because, we don't. So all we're asking this council and the chiefs is to support us. This afternoon we will have a gathering down here by the island. We'll probably do the upper island. It's just going to be briefly for a couple of hours to come in support of Indigenous Declaration call to action that we as Native peoples, I don't know if any of you had seen the campaign to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Day. The state of Alaska did that. Portland, Albuquerque, these major metropolitan cities are now changing that in recognition of us. So while we ask the council, humbly ask you today on behalf of the Indigenous Environmental Network, I would like to also add Brenda Jo McNamara. She is the regional coordinator for the Indigenous Environmental Network, and Lisa and I are the Southeast regional reps. Those of you that went to the farm symposium and look in your booklet, the Indigenous Environmental Network is one of the models that they did up in Minnesota for the farm to table to fight childhood obesity. And I know we had Joey in here, and a lot of agriculture, aquaculture was another part of my platform I have the plans ready, and I would like to be able to come in and talk with several of you that are sitting on those committees, especially with sanitation, looking at how we can start looking at gathering up the biodiesel fuel. We can start processing it and producing it ourselves. We had the gentleman just talk about one product, and that was plastics. Now I'm here to tell you I have a concern about plastics because of the dioxins, whether you burn it or melt it. There's studies. If you have a bottled water and in the summertime you leave it in your car, they tell you don't open that bottle of water if you leave it in there a couple of days, because there's a chemical called dioxin that is poison in that plastic. This is what we're saying here. We have to have proven technology. Anybody that comes in for a corporation and says that it's good for us and that there's nothing that's going to happen, look around. That's your first cue of putting that red flag up. So we ask the council, please, humbly in support of the Indigenous Environmental Network, because here in the Southeast, like I said, looking at South Carolina, we are going to have to be the forefront, the people in the front, to lead the way to protect our environment all the way around, from the people, the land, the water, the air, everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Missy. Teresa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Missy, thank you for bringing this in, and you're right. I really appreciated the comments that were made in here the other morning on the new opportunity that we may have for solid waste. I had heard that a couple of years ago, and I was just so glad that somebody here jumped on that and took off with it, and I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to continue supporting that. We are Cherokee, and it's not just our humility and Gadugi and those other wonderful things that connect us, our language, our land, our blood. It's our environment. It is our environment. And Native people understand probably way more than others, especially those that are capitalists who are doing everything they can for the dollar. We Native people understand more about how detrimental we are and can be to this earth. And we are, being Native people, we see a little bit further into the future. It doesn't stop with our kids and grandkids, it goes even further. And I agree with this, and I think that tribal government this is something that we talked about that came in. I think former Representative Wolf brought it in the last administration, and it pertained to the agriculture. And I'm hoping that we get someone here that can really step up, that's going to just grab that, make it into a small department that can only grow. I like the thought of from the garden to the table, for children, for sick people, golly, for all of us. It's just, we have to start doing these things. We have to put them back on real food.
Right.
My granddaughter did a little test, and she took a hamburger from McDonald's, and she put it on a plate, and she had to watch it every day. And at the end of the week, it was the same, because McDonald's hamburgers, public, are made from cardboard. There's no meat in them. There's pink stuff in cardboard. Don't feed that to your children if you can help it. The catch, though, is that food from the garden to the table can be expensive. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm hoping that our agriculture division, and I hope we get one, I'm going to support it, will step up and start helping us do these things. But as far as dealing with other nations, I think that I would be proud if our nation stood behind, don't let the pipeline come through.
Right.
Protect that sacred site. We're still here in this country.
Right.
And with all the media and access to it, it's time for us to make that noise again.
Right.
So
Well, and
I'll make
Teresa,
a move, we pass for legislation.
And just in response real quick, like I said, in 1996, Lisa and I coordinated the 7th Annual Indigenous Environmental Network Conference, outdoor 4-day conference in Big Cove at the Yogi and the Sposies campground. It was supported by former Principal Chief Joyce Dugan and her administration. We had over 2,000 visitors from all the way from South America to come here and talk about, our indigenous environmental concerns and issues. We also, back in 1995, this council, on behalf of the Indigenous Environmental Network, sent legislation in support of the Gwich'in people who were fighting against the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge being opened up to test drilling. They are still being threatened by that. So the Eastern Band of Cherokee have already supported the Indigenous Environmental Networks on those efforts when we first began 20 years ago as representatives. Lisa and I did. We humbly ask you again to support Teresa's move and pass this. And if any of you can, bring your children down this afternoon from 5 up to 8. We're going to have just some, just to get together and let's talk about this. We're going to be putting some stuff up on the Indigenous Environmental Net website. This is an international global campaign. Lisa and I, through the Indigenous Environmental Network, were able to participate in the largest environmental marches in Washington, D.C., in President Obama's For Climate Change March, which were over 50,000 people marched there. The indigenous group were the lead group in those marches. And in New York City, there was over 400,000 5,000. And that march was worldwide. It was so cool because they had kiosks all over that were showing people in Australia that were walking in Sydney and people that were in London, and the millions of people on that day that stood up for the People's Climate Change March. So I want to thank you for that, and please pass our resolution and support us. Thank you.
I've got Anita, then Adam, then Tommy.
Hi, Missy. Yes, I commend you for bringing this in. And the wording in here of having a goal aimed at becoming sustainable and eco-friendly to protect our air and water, I am in full support of, and I
you.
definitely second that motion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Adam?
Hey, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this in, Missy. I know I agree with the parts, the commitments to support moratoriums on extreme fossil fuels, such as fracking and stuff. I know this tribe has took a stance on any of that. I need a legal opinion, though, on some of the other stuff, because you did mention one of the things that Cameron brought in about, melting down the plastics and stuff. And I'm not no engineer or even a scientist. I just want to make sure that we're not restricting ourselves, with some of the language on that process.
Right. I can bring you some information on that. Back in 7 years ago, we went to a national dioxin conference in Louisiana. They call that Cancer Alley, actually, because of how all of that comes down the Mississippi River. All of these come down. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that's where we held this, and it talked about plastics. We even work with how the United States Department of Defense is taking chemical weapons. We have some concerns about that, building incinerators and burning stuff. Anytime you do that, there's an emissions that is let go. There's an argument of calling what we call chemtrails from the airplanes. Somebody said, no, those are clouds. And I went, no, that's fuel coming from anything other than a bird that leaves something in the air. Even the bird, when it drops something, it comes down to the ground. So see, these are some of the issues that we're having to understand. And my question to you is that I would have some serious concerns. My question would be, what type of industry would we have to bring in to do that type of work? See, right now we have the paper industries. Where we have the businesses around here, we are losing money on cardboard. We need to be picking up every bit of this cardboard and recycling it back to these paper companies, and they're needing that. You know why? Because of your hot coffee cups. Those coffee cups, they have that thick cardboard around it, right? Well, if you go over to Champion Paper Mill and these guys over here, that's what they want. They're basically coming away from this. You know why? Because of these.
No, I
So
agree
they're
with
having
you.
to find other alternatives to keep their corporate businesses open. So my thing is this: I would be really concerned of any corporation coming in to do any type of burning, any type of chemical, other than Original Murph Recycling Center. And the reason I said that, if you go to Augusta, Georgia, they have one there. It's been there for, 25 years. And what they do is they bring all the trash and they separate it, sort it, and they recycle it. Plastic, glass, paper, everything. It has about maybe, if we want to do Western North Carolina, we could probably hire and employ about 250 people to do that, let alone on top of what we do in sanitation. If you've been watching Asheville is pissed off at ServPro right now. They need trash pickup. Now, would we not be smart enough to go out? You see what I'm saying? This is what we're talking about, leading, being that leaders. Let's not cut off our, whatever the old saying is, our nose to spite our face or whatever. There's always going to be those concerns. But when I'm sitting here looking at industry or manufacturing or jobs for our people for that, I'm not looking at burning nothing down. I'm looking at recycling that plastic. I will bet the powers and the ones that be away from here, make it into something else. That's how I feel that we as the Eastern Band should be in leading that. Thank you.
Tommy?
Hold on, I forgot
Adam,
the
you got
floor.
the floor. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's just some of the concerns I had.
Okay.
That's why I was wanting to look at.
And I
like
can
a-
bring that to you.
I guess a legal stance, and I know
I
that
can't do that, but-
we're looking at we're looking in the opportunities such as bottled water, I know was mentioned this morning.
Yeah.
And you know, what all goes into packaging bottled
Right.
water?
You're exactly right. And just like I said, in that plastic bottle, if you leave that plastic bottle in the hot car for even just 2 hours, you see how it sweats inside of there? That dioxin, that plastic has dioxin in it. And that's a cancer. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a carcinoma breast cancer survivor. You think I haven't learned? I do not use bottled water. If anything else, I'm like Tommy with this right here. That's how we stop it, because anytime you start producing that plastic, that's still, you see what I'm saying? That's still adding on to the trash, to everything else on top of that. So my thinking is this: I ain't worried about bottled water. I'm looking at how we're going to start stopping that process altogether. Not a business to hurt it, but we have to understand what we are producing right now can hurt.
So I guess this legislation, I'll make a long question short, is, does it limit us on some of the diversifications that we're looking at,
No.
like bottled water or, you know, melting down?
No.
Because I've always said that. I think we need to use some of the things that come out of the casino, instead of shipping it all
Yes.
off to somewhere, we could do that ourselves.
Yes.
Sort through it, but there's a cost to that, you know, and I think we need to really look at the studies on how much it costs, because I know the military, one of their biggest resources was rounds fired downrange, such as like a basic
Yeah,
training
yeah,
post.
yeah.
So their highest producing of non-profit was brass. They would send off recycled brass, take the fund and
Yeah.
put it into something else.
Yes.
So I thought, well, why don't we do that here within the tribe? Look at all the trash and stuff that's being pushed around.
Exactly. I watch flea market flip. You can go get something that's out down flea market and turn it into a 500 piece of whatever. These are some of the things that we want to start with our kids. We see it with our Cherokee Youth Council, with the boys and girls clubs. So we do already have those here that we want to tap in and start networking, communicating in. But no, this doesn't limit it. All it says is that we are taking the stance to protect it. If we go out to look at those types of businesses, they will have to understand that these are our rules and regulations, and then they would have to abide by us.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, just having it brought
And
in
it would
there, I was
actually
trying to
give
read
us
through it.
more power in that. Not to keep them away, but we want to look at all of these corporations that are doing changes in their environmental.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Tommy?
Missy, back in the early 2000s, when I was working on a master's degree, there was a gentleman that came and spoke at length on fossil fuels. So at this time, I'm going to call the question to pass her legislation.
Okay. Right now, we have a move to pass by Teresa, second by Anita, question by Tommy. All those in favor of the move to pass, raise your hand.
Wow. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Okay, if we don't have any other ordinances or resolutions out there, Travis? Okay. Anybody have any other announcements to make?